one of the things that has to happen in order to grow a business and keep the creatives working properly is to understand that you can't do everything. And the quicker you understand that you can't do everything, the quicker you understand that you have to create a secondary person who sees your vision and ultimately try to accomplish your vision.
Jeff, thank you so much for joining me on the Let's Talk Business podcast.
Welcome. Thank you. Thanks for letting me come.
Sure. So there's a lot to talk today to you about. Obviously, I've been following a little bit of your journey. We got acquainted through I think one of your team members, which is always amazing to see somebody that's looking out for the success of their boss, leader. Let's call it on the show. We call it leader.
Leader sounds nice, a little too warming, but yes.
So let's start. Obviously, you've grown and a business. Your core business in the architectural space. Obviously, now you're doing much more than that. You're in real estate and other things we'll get to. Give us a little bit of the backstory for those who don't know you, how you got started in the architectural space and in general about your company.
So it's actually a cute story. I went to school in Israel for a year, and my mother says, "You're coming back and you're going to school." I was like, "Okay." And she basically told me to go to architecture school because you're good at it. That's how literally I went to architecture school. That's how it all started. My mother insisting on. So they said it was a good, strong woman in your life is always important. So that's one thing that happened. And then from there, I said our journey started when I actually graduated college. I would say that the industry was in a bad situation, and I actually was looking for a job. It was very, very hard to find a job. I actually found a job at an expediter starting out first year. Within that year, I realized that there was a niche within the industry, and I just opened up my own firm while I was working for her. That was about 15 years ago. Ever since then, we've grown. Then we moved to my basement. And then from there, I would say we're a team of 3. We were business designers. We've rebranded a few times since then, once since then, from business designs to Rise Architecture. I would say we've grown from my basement doing one-family houses, basement apartments, a small work like that, to today, I think, thank God, we're working in 16 states and designing about $2 billion worth of real estate throughout the country, just on the architecture side.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I want to go back to a couple of things you mentioned. Obviously, going back first to the story with your mother. You mentioned the words that you're good at it. That's why she convinced you to go to school for architectural. What is that, and how much did that play out to be true, and the reason why you are successful in it?
So I will say that it's part of a story. So the success that we had, first of all, I would say this has nothing really to do with me. I wake up in the morning and whatever gets thrown at me that day from God, I hope to the best that I could accommodate as best as I possibly can.
That's exactly what we all do.
Right. And we sometimes forget about that, and we try to portray and push our own will in, and it's much harder to do that. Anybody running a business doesn't see that. I don't think has their ear to the ground of what's happening, because the way business flows in has nothing to do with my day-to-day operations, what we do. Thank God.
So there's a line that I use a lot, which is the little we control is maybe the input, for sure not the outcome. The outcome for sure not.
100%. So, and then being good at architecture does not mean you're good at running a business. And that's really kind of a lot of the architecture firms in the United States are small mom and pop shops, 1 and 2 people. And the reason for that is because being an architect is very glamorous. You get to design, but the bigger picture is actually running a business. Running a business is a lot more difficult than actually being an architect. Because an architect is sitting in your corner, you design, it's really nice. And I would say I got a little bit of my father in there. My father dropped out of high school, and he ran his own business. He ran actually a multi-million-dollar manufacturing business, and he sold it and retired in his 50s. I always joke, I'm trying to beat him by 10 years. I'm not there yet. I'm working on it. And then my mother is the exact opposite. She went in her 40s, went back to school, became a lawyer, majored in 5 majors. So a little bit of both in me. So I got my architecture in me, which is a little bit more the education side. And then from the side of my father, I got a little bit more business background than me, so a little more business savvy. And the truth is, it's really a combination of both. You have to provide a very, very good product. And the good product is important in understanding the nitty gritty of that product is not just being good at architecture, but being good at understanding the finances of it, understanding all the aspects that come into the architecture. You know, someone's expanding their business, understanding why they're expanding their business, how to better benefit them through architecture. But at the same time, it's not just the architecture, it's the business aspect of it. And you have to focus on the growth of it, because or else you just get stuck in, I'm an architect with 2 people in my basement and I'm designing the house and I'll call it a day.
I think this is such a valid point. And obviously we are a very similar space, and we're in the creative space as a branding and marketing agency at PTEX. I think I want to dive in a little bit deeper to this, what you just said. And I think a lot of listeners would appreciate it, which is there is a ton of great talent out there that just didn't make it. They're maybe sitting still in their basement or maybe somewhere else and trying to design work. Either should it be architectural, should it be interior design, should it be graphic design, whatever it is. And they just cannot get ahead of themselves because of what you just mentioned, is understanding that the craft is one part of it, but what really will, get you far is the business side of things. Is this something you realize from the earlier, like right away, or is this something that a lot of creatives realize this a little bit too late or a little bit later in the game, so to speak? They're on for the creative process, and maybe the first few clients or the first year or two in their business, they're all about the creative process. People say, oh, wow, you're doing amazing work, creative work, and so on and so forth. Only at one point saying, wait a minute, I'm just doing it. Where's the business side of things? I'm not seeing coming home with anything at the end of the week. Which one was it for you?
So when I started out, I was an architect. I was dreams of designing the next skyscraper in Manhattan. I said, Baruch Hashem, we've got to 18 stories already, so it's not bad. But we're not at the tallest we'd like to be. Which I said our goal is to hit 100 stories at one point, but we'll get there one day. I would say we started on the creative side, and we really focused on the creative side. And I realized, I would say within our first 2 years, that everybody making money on the project was everybody but the professionals. And so it actually approached me at the time. I didn't take up his offer, but actually very gave me a venture's offer. He's a very, very business person. He says, oh, you're a very good architect. You're very good at designing. Maybe I run the business for you. You run the architecture. We'll create a business together with this business. And being cocky as it was at the time, I said, yeah, I'll figure it out. I would say it took me 2 more years in the industry to really kind of realize that he was right. That in essence, the business is more important than the architecture. Actually, I wouldn't say it that way because that's a little bit incorrect. So the business
equally important,
but to grow a business is more important to focus on the business side than the architecture side, because there's so many other pieces of the puzzle that need to fit into place. Now, if you're providing a bad product, you can't sell it. You still have to have a good product, and that's where the good architecture comes into play. But if you don't understand what's happening on the back end with businesses and how to grow those components of it, ultimately you're going to be a 3-person shop in your basement forever. And maybe you'll make money, maybe you won't, whatever that would be at that point.
So again, I don't want to run over this conversation. I want to dive deeper because I think this is a very important point, and our listeners could take out a lot of good feedback from this. And this is something that we've seen a lot of creatives wrestle, because let's say in the creative space, the second you start looking at the business side of things more than the creative side of things, all of a sudden your creative drops, because now you start delegating the creative process to others, and you might be the chief creative officer in your company. And I've seen it in our company. I remember very early on, I started doing graphic design. Like I'm talking about, by the time we're recording this, we celebrated our 23rd anniversary a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
Hey, congratulations.
Thanks. And I remember beginning, I was doing creative design. Today, I don't even have Photoshop, Illustrator on my computer. Little fun fact, my son asked me on something, he needed something for yeshiva. He wanted I should create something for him. I said, I promise you, I can't. I don't have the tools. The farthest I go is Canva. I was trying to play around with Canva to design something for him. Came Monday morning, asked one of my team members, please do it for my son. I need 15 minutes. So it just comes to show, because you can't be great at both. It's just at one point, one has to take over. But the challenge that creative people have, because if the creative process is what they enjoy, usually they don't enjoy the business side of things, because that's boring. And sometimes somebody loves the business side of things and it doesn't. Like, how do you bridge the gap and be still seeing what's out there, having the motivation on the creativity side of your firm, and at the same time focusing on the business side of things?
You ever heard of this concept of duplicates?
I wish they exist, maybe now with AI.
I have a cloning machine in my basement, and I have a few of me running around. One guy does a creative side. So the answer is that there's something called duplicates, which again, it's a concept in business. It's a concept in a lot of businesses. And one of the things that has to happen in order to grow a business and keep the creatives working properly is to understand that you can't do everything. And the quicker you understand that you can't do everything, the quicker you understand that you have to create a secondary person who sees your vision and ultimately try to accomplish your vision. I would say that our staff, Baruch Hashem, thank God, I have people that are with us since the beginning. I have someone who's been with me for over 15 years. His wife works with me now. I have people that, I made a joke that they work with me, and I said, I knew you before your husband, and now you have 2 kids, And the truth is that they've been with me so long, they know exactly what I want. They can see a job, they can tell me, I'll only send it to you once I know that you're going to be okay with it because they know what my creative process is. That leeway some of your time to go focus on the business side of it because your designs are ultimately coming out. It's not really where you're letting go of the design. I think letting go is the wrong word. It's creating the ability for people to design with your vision at the same time. That's one of the things that we did multiple times. I think we did it in the New York office, the Lakewood office. We put someone in place. They're also very much in that position, and it's allowed us to expand drastically because of it.
Got it. And I think this is a very important point, is understanding that, everything in life is a balancing act, and understanding that part. And you touched something we spoke about, keeping your employees and keeping them happy for so many years. I want to speak a little bit about that topic, especially in the creative space, because it's a fact and it's something that I don't mind sharing, is when you grow a creative agency, is that the talent is a huge part of who you are and the type of work you output. And you would depend on them and they depend on you. And sometimes you could have phenomenal creatives that had their own firms and they decided, you know what, I'm good at what I do. Let me make sure that my paycheck and my compensation is where I need to be, and let me just create. What are some of the things you have implemented in your structure to keep your employees motivated, to keep it that family style that you just spoke about?
So in the creative industry, one of the things very, very important that we find is that you have to give them leeway to think because they want to feel like they're still being creative. A lot of creators don't want to be stuck on the business side. They don't we have somebody who runs our Lakewood, let me just have a structure of Lakewood office. I brought in a partner who runs the Lakewood office. But on top of that, we have someone underneath her that's also a licensed architect. And she mentioned to us as well that she would love to open up her own business. The reason she doesn't open up her business, she doesn't want the business headaches. And the truth is that she's a great designer and she literally runs, but she's already stepping into the position of being the actual lead architect of the project. But as that division grew, we already have 16 employees there. We need to have someone just become another more visionary, total visionary business side of it and pull that person out. As that's happening, we've noticed is that she's stepping into that position, even though she doesn't want to, into the business side of it. But at the same time, she's right, is that the growth component of it, in order to allow them to grow internally and grow with the company, is the most important part to them because they want to feel like, I think the creative is like the soul that I want to change the world. You have to feel like they're still changing the world,
Yeah.
It's very important because it's what gives them the drive to create. And what gives us the drive to create. Both business-wise also the same thing. But that drive to create has to still be flourishing and has to be encouraged because if you're going to stifle it with saying, you must design the way I want you to, I find you lose a lot of people very quickly.
Got it. And speaking on the topic of company culture and speaking about your employees, I have two questions, follow-up questions. One is, in terms of, you mentioned before about giving them the creative space. We have seen it, and obviously I've heard it from so many other agencies. It's also the autonomy of owning the project and putting in their everything they got and from the creative side in the project, which sometimes is a conflict on the business side of things because you have estimated a certain amount of hours, you've estimated a certain timeline for a project, and now the creatives are just going out of scope, going out of original timeline, just to be able to bring in the creativity into the process. Have you found any type of ideas that you've implemented in your company to conquer what I just mentioned?
That's a tough issue. And we still grapple with it every day. We have created certain elements to hopefully curtail as best as we possibly can. But at the end of the day, it's an issue. What we do is we do actually mitigate it by creating a certain, instead of us creating the amount of time for the project, we'll actually go, this is your project. How long do you think it's going to take? Here's your timeline. Make your own timeline. Keep track of your timeline. And if you don't hold to your timeline that you gave us, we're going to hold you accountable to the timeline that you gave us. So they'll actually work extra hours to accommodate it because like, wait a second, let me play with it. No, I don't have time. I got to get it out because I told them to get it in 3 hours. I have to have it in 3 hours. Now they still go over their time. They'll go to 3.5 hours to 4 hours, but you don't end up with like 7, 8 hours on a 3-hour window because they realize that they're the ones who gave you the time. They promise you they'll get it that time. I find when they give you them the time, that they hold themselves accountable to it, which in turn also helps with culture because they're growing internally by creating their own mindsets. Like it's very hard for someone like me because I can design a house while I'm sleeping. But I don't mean that's telling me, but I know it's so backwards. I have jokes. I talked to some of my clientele and they asked me a question about their house they designed 5 years ago. And I was like, hey, the bathroom or the upstairs is off by 6 inches between the two bedrooms. She goes, you said you haven't touched my house in 5 years. It's just, he says, like the ghost of me walking between your house. Once I designed your house, I know it's done. I designed a building, like the back of our hands. It's very hard for me to push the same ideals on my staff because I can do it so fast. But at the same time, if they give me their timeline and they say they can do it, they want to hold themselves accountable. We find that works immensely to keep us very close to our timetables.
Beautiful. And the second question I wanted to ask you is there anything you've seen working from a compensation perspective of what you do with your teams in order to be able to really give them a piece of the puzzle, so to speak, a piece of the pie, in order to incentivize them for success of projects?
We have two different levels of incentivization. So we'll have what we call office operator. Office operator can get a piece of the overall puzzle and the actual ownership of the company. But at the same time, we have people that are office managers that can get a profit share conversation. So the bigger they grow, the more they do, we'll get the profit share. And it's actually we didn't discuss before, but I actually run 5 other companies besides Rise Architecture. And one of them is called Jeff Akerman Services. So we put somebody in charge there. And what we did was we basically, if you grow the company and create profit share, and it actually grew the company enormously. I think we've grown in another 10 years into I think it's $9 to $10 million revenue a year. And the way that was done is because the profit share was so crucial to him, he would watch the money. And every time he was like, okay, I got to collect more money this month. I got to collect more money. I need another. For him, every money he would collect was a check in his pocket. We ultimately gave him a piece of the puzzle because he really did very well. He grew the company very nicely. So we gave him a piece of the puzzle. But at the same time, we even kept the profit share on top of the piece of the puzzle he owns because we felt that was helped grow the company drastically.
Got it. So what I'm hearing is that if you're expanding yourself to different ventures and different initiatives, if you put in people, you're making sure that they're incentivized to run it profitable.
I want to expand it over. It's not just
Sure.
profitable. I think it's very important for them to, the same way you have the mentality that they want to feel like they just design what's designing. But also someone who's running a business, which is more of a business position at the head, they want to feel that they're having long-term growth. So it's not just about giving them a piece of the puzzle. It's about making them feel that they're part of the whole entity to help for the growth. It's very important that they're focused on that because it's not about the money only. It's about understanding that it's theirs. The more they own that project, the more they will make it grow. So the same thing goes to a business. If you're being a secondary person, they need to feel like they own that piece of puzzle. Like every one of the businesses that I've opened, I brought in full partners. And I said, you own 50% of the business. I'll fund a big chunk of the project. But you know that the bigger it grows, the more money you make. Grow the business. And you'll find that there are a lot more time that they want to grow the business because it becomes theirs. It's their business, not my business. It becomes their business. Again, they're sharing profits with me. And I always create a window where they can like our Lakewood office, when we opened it up, we gave them first a 50-50 with a certain component we give them a salary, and then the salary is going to be built back to me. So it was going to be only a 50-50 share as he pays back the salary. I realized that at the end of the first years, he was working so hard, I actually upped it. We gave him his salary plus the 50-50 share. So he's getting both. And the reason for that is it's very important that they see future growth also. And they see that we're willing to give future growth.
Exactly. We recently, like I was saying, in the last 10 years, we've seen that shift a lot, where people are not just looking for a job, as we call it, just a job.
Right.
They're looking to make a difference. They're looking to see the growth plan. And I always tell our team members when we interview them, before they start a job, that whenever they ask me like a growth question, I always say, thank you for that question. Why? Because if we're responsible to help companies grow, if you're not thinking about your own growth, how do you expect to think about the companies that you're working for?
Yeah, like one of the things my partner that I talk about is one of the things that we pride ourselves that we can give people jobs that help them live, not just jobs that you sit and you come 9 to 5, real life changing jobs. And that's really the main goal of our business. One of the main goals of our business, specifically in the Lakewood market, is that we very much focus on that we can help people who need jobs that can help for their families, that we can actually provide that. And we're not talking about small salaries. Our goal is to really provide real living wages for staff and help them grow internally, which is why we have staff for over 15 years.
Beautiful.
Most of our staff is there. I think we've lost maybe 3 employees over the course of our entire operation.
Wow, amazing. I know we're not going to have time to speak about all the ventures, but there's one specific venture that I want to dive in a little bit, which I know that you're involved in building a new community in Florida.
A small project.
Small project. So let's give us a little bit of the details and also how you came about this idea.
So the idea actually happened on the back of a napkin conversation. Well, someone said, I have this idea about building a community. And he goes to a partner of mine who I did a lot of work with in New York. So he says, I'm only doing it if Jeff's involved. So he calls me up. He says, I have this project. It's in Florida. I was like, were you crazy? We're building a city. You're nuts. This is not normal. We'll go nowhere. So he says, no, my God. I said, okay, no problem. Okay, let's do it. That's literally how the conversation started. Then in turn, it ended up being that the entire project ended up dumped on my shoulders. Wasn't initially the plan. The plan was that all three of us were going to do different pieces of the puzzle. And then for some, whatever reason, the project had dumped on my shoulders. I basically ran point on the entire project from that point forward. And to me, construction's easy because to build something very easy, so, the points of the puzzle, but to build a community is much more complicated. You have to talk about community building is a whole different entity. I need to make sure that the people coming together are supposed to be together, and no one's going to be hurt together. And I also have to be careful about the legal side because you have to sell. I have to be open to the public, so I have to. Every piece of the puzzle has to be pinpointed, work together, have a meeting. Everything could go wrong in a split second. Everything can go right in a split second. And there's no, the hand of God. You can see the hand of God pointing like, no, you're not going to do this, and you're going to do this. Like, because I spent hours on this, and like that doesn't work, but the next thing works. Like everything just happens the way it's supposed to happen, regardless of my planning. I can tell you that much. And that's how it happened. And the truth is, it's really when you say changing the world. This is our plan is to change the world. There, most people see it as a 1,300 unit development with 800,000 square feet of commercial space and 2 synagogues and 2 schools, which is a community, small, it's only 530 acres. The real truth is that's really only phase one. Our goal is to build between 10,000 and 15,000 units there and really build a city there. That's our real goal.
Wow. So tell us more about where is it up to? Like, what's the current status?
The current status right now is that we've moved about 1 million cubic yards of dirt. We've done all the grading of the site already for the first phase. We've already started putting in storm drainage on the ground already. So our piping's going on the ground, our structures are going on the ground. After those are in, that's where water and sewer starts going in, and then we go vertical at the same time. So I would say, hopefully in the next couple of months, you're going to start seeing housing popping up all over the place there.
Beautiful. And if I could ask you a personal question on this, like what's driving you? I know that money is not the driving factor for the stuff that you do. So what's driving you for such a unique, big, audacious project?
So the answer is that really money is really not the priority here. And the truth is that I get complaints. I get complaints at synagogue in the morning. I get complaints all over places that the truth is that we have a major problem on our housing problem in our house. I'm not talking about overall the United States. The United States has a 20% shortage on housing. And it's going to get a lot worse when the migrants that came into the country start looking for housing. It's going to get up 10 times worse. Now, in the Jewish community, we have a bigger problem. The bigger problem in the Jewish community is that we need to be near a synagogue. We need to be near a school. We need certain things in walking distance. And our places are saturated. If you look at Williamsburg, Brooklyn, right? Williamsburg is a good example. You have people moving in because people want housing besides the Jews. The Jewish community has to be within a 5-block radius. It's shooting prices to the roof. You have schools graduating close to 1,500 boys a year. And the Jewish community like them get married with the first 2 years after school. Where are they going? Yeah, Borough Park just put out a paper in the last, I think 3 days ago, that they finally realized that they have a housing crisis. There's not enough units for the people who need houses there. There's no place to go. We have to create new communities. We have no choice. And the facts are is that if we don't think outside the box to create these new communities, think of Linden alone, which is Linden, New Jersey. They started in Linden, New Jersey. They have over 500 families on the ground and expanding on a daily basis of close to 20, 30 families because there's nowhere else to go. And the problem is that they have to go further out and they have to start new synagogues because there's no more room. There's just no more room. Mm-hmm. So the problem is that even if we do go into these communities, the cost is so absorbent for the houses. Look at houses in the Muncie area. You're talking about $1 million for a 3-bedroom house that needs to be ripped apart, so to say. It's not sustainable. So what we're trying to do is actually create a sustainable solution. Imagine buying a 5-bedroom house for about $600,000. Get yourself a nice piece of land with it. Live like a mensch. You have a real school there functioning. You have cost of living there is 30% less than New York and New Jersey area. And if we can figure out a way to create a new community, which is what we're trying to accomplish here, we can at least take a drop in the bucket, solve the problem. Doesn't matter if it's the problem entirely, but if we can do a slight fix or a slight modification to the problem, and slowly that will go. As you say, you have to say you start with a small little plant the seed, and that hopefully grows into a forest where we can build thousands of houses and keep the prices down. Like one of the things I told my partners is that 2 things I told my partners. Some of them they didn't like so much, but some of them they do like so much. I do what I told them though. One of the things I said is I don't want to raise the prices for the next 10 years. And what I don't mean by raise prices is that our profit margin that we set today, I want the same profit margin for the next 10 years. Even though you're not going to make as much money as it is because you can raise the prices, the goal is not just money. We got to keep our profit margin the same across the board. The second thing I told them, that anything that you make money is at 10%, I want to go towards coal, which is I wanted to go back into the charity, into the community, to help the community, because the goal is to build a city and help the Jewish community solve a very, very big problem that they're having. And that's a housing crisis. That's a lot worse than the housing crisis in the United States.
It's amazing what you're doing. And, if you speak now, we know there's mental health issues within the community around the world, but actually within the community as well, and other issues. And a lot of it, if you speak to therapists, you speak to different people from, activists, so to speak, they'll tell you a lot of it is the housing crisis, because people are living in small apartments with a lot of kids, and it's just they don't have their peace of mind. And ultimately, that's creating a negative effect even on kids. They don't know where to play. They don't know where to go. They don't
An apartment in Lakewood today, a basement apartment, which used to be $1,200 a month, today is $2,300 a month.
Wow.
Basement apartment, and there's nothing available. It's become a disaster. It's a big problem.
When do you think the first few families that are moving in?
We're hoping in the next school year. Again, every day that we're not vertical construction I can't say we'll hit it or don't hit it, because I don't know the facts on the ground as every day changes. Our real goal is to push 150 families at the beginning of next school year. I know it's getting very close. We should have been vertical already. We're hoping to go vertical very soon, so we can actually accommodate that.
Beautiful. I want to ask you one more question, because we mentioned a couple of times partners in this conversation for this project and other projects. I know you mentioned that you have different businesses with different partners. I as well have a lot of different ventures and different partners. What do you look when you partner with someone? What are you looking in a partner?
It's a good question. You have to give me a second to think about a good answer.
Sure.
It depends what the partner is for. In real estate ventures, I prefer a partner that's a little bit not involved, because I want them to see the vision and help us grow. That vision is not necessarily so much involved, because sometimes everybody has their own vision. In business, I think the partner that I bring in is very important, that they have the vision of the growth of the business we're trying to accomplish. Like, we brought in a partner in Lakewood, is a good example. I sat with him. I think we negotiated for almost 5 months before we actually pulled the trigger on it. And the reason is because we want to make sure that we both understood the trajectory we were trying to accomplish within the business. And that was the priority to pull this off. It's really crucial. And I learned this the hard way. I'll tell you that I learned this the hard way. It's really crucial if you bring in a partner that you really hammer out the details before and put it in writing, even if you're the best friends in the world, to make sure that you both understand what your plan is. A good example is this project. My partners were supposed to be very much involved in the day-to-day operation, and they're very much not, right? A good example, I learned the hard way that you have to write things down on paper, because as much as you can agree on a table, it could happen that it's not going to happen. And then if that's the case, how do you deal with those situations? So, like when I dealt with my partner Lakewood, we actually I think we must have spent $10,000 just writing a contract on every scenario that possible could happen and what the outcome would be. So there's no questions. And then everybody can have like a state of mind where you're calm, because you're not worried about that guy might screw you or this guy might. None of that's going to be the case, because ultimately everything's on the paper, everything's clear, even if you negotiated before, to make sure it's clear. And the vision is the key component. If they don't have the same vision as you have, you can have a partner for today to tomorrow, and all the paper in the world can be written down. End of the day, you end up forming a partner of it regardless.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I'm a strong believer that sometimes you embrace diversity by bringing in a partner that maybe has certain qualifications that you don't have. And I think for certain people that works very well. But, there's a notion out there that when things don't go well, that's when you start fighting with a partner or ripping yourself apart. Sometimes it's just the opposite. If things are going very well and one partner wakes up and saying, wait a minute, I'm doing all the work. Where's my partner? So it's exactly what you just said. Like, if you could have a clear written agreement as far as what the responsibilities are. And I've sat with meetings with potential partners before they started, like just even talking it out. And I will be very blunt. And I say, what exactly do you want from the partner that you're not planning to do yourself? And they can answer that question. Sometimes it's just money. The person just doesn't have the funding. Sometimes it's they want to work together. And I'll be sometimes very harsh on it and say, you know what? I didn't come to you to try to, to convince me that I don't need a partner. I said, I'm not convincing you don't need a partner. I want you should be so convinced that you need a partner that is very clear what you're going to be writing down.
Right, so I've heard a lot of times that partners could be the bane of your existence sometimes. And I realized that a good partner is the exact opposite. And the example I would use is my Lakewood partner and I do not see eye to eye all the time. That doesn't mean we don't see eye to eye on certain things. He's extremely, extremely technical, and I'm much more, I would say, esoteric.
Yeah.
saying it. So I'll come in like this glorified design concept, and we're going to put the glass in the column. He's like, but how are you going to build it? I'm like, I don't know. We'll figure it out. He's like, no. How are you going to build it? Tell me how you're going to build it. We'll sit there, I'll hammer on me to make sure I can build it. And the truth is, he's very technical, and it's very good because I need someone very technical in the business. And we need someone very esoteric in the business because or else he can't grow the business.
Exactly.
So it works very, very well. We kind of bounce off each other. That concept is very important. I think if you have a good partner, the growth of the business is astronomically much easier to grow, even if you may not see the problem. But if you guys see differently and understand that you see differently, do a lot more for each other quickly.
Exactly. And I think that's what I referred before when I said embrace diversity is exactly sometimes the worst recipe for a disaster with two partners is where they're exactly the same type. You want to have somebody that will question you. So if you are a fast runner, you will have somebody that's going to slow you down. But the key, what I've seen with partners that I've been involved and even people that I've seen successfully having partners is you don't have to agree, but you have to agree to disagree and have to respect the other partner's opinion.
Yeah.
When there is mutual respect, then even if you disagree on something, you'll come to an agreement to how to approach that challenge, growth, whatever it is. So I appreciate you bringing this up.
It's a great point. I mean, it's tantamount to success or fail. So
exactly. Where can people find out more about you or to hear more about the ventures you're involved?
Good question. A lot of it's quietly on the other side. Each one has one of the things I do in my companies. I actually have all them as strategic entities. They don't actually not under one wing because a lot of times they open up other companies. We actually create each of our companies to be self-sufficient. So, for instance, like we have an expediting business, but our expediting business is not part of Rise Architecture, so they can do work for other architects. So they don't they're hiring another architect from. So every single one of our entities are kind of independent entities. But our main business, which our architecture business, which everything built off of, is Rise Architecture, which they can check on risearchitecture.com. We're on LinkedIn. We try to make a little bit more prolific aspects of it, but we're getting there one day at a time.
Beautiful. Let's close with the 4 rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Okay.
Number 1, a book that changed your life.
A book that changed my life. That's a good question. A book that changed my life. Actually, we'll tell you the book that changed my life is the Gemara. In English,
we see it right in behind you.
Right behind me. The truth is, I would say when my wife insisted I start sitting and studying in the morning, which I didn't do for a while, and I studied what I would say is like very, very heavy in depth. It changed the way I think. There's no question about it. It changed my life.
Beautiful. Number 2, a piece of advice you got that you'll never forget.
Piece of advice I got. The piece of advice I got that I never forget is a lot of people run to real estate and run to what I would call residual income essence right away to generate things. The first thing that's more important to generate is a business that brings in income that you can live off of. Don't run quickly. A lot of real estate people are hurting very much now. They have no other secondary income and they're in a very bad situation. The biggest key, and I think that actually in that book, it talks about you're supposed to split your money into 3 ways: a third into business, a third in cash, and a third in real estate. And the reason is because real estate could go bad, could go good. Cash will always protect you for that fluctuation. And the third that's in business is generating revenue to you every single time. So it's very important to keep your balance, understand that you need revenue-based aspects, you need cash flow, and at the same time, you can then invest in other assets, which is a crucial part of it.
Beautiful. Number 3, anything you wish you could go back and do differently?
I wish I would know what I know today, 15 years ago. I do things a little bit differently. Always wish you felt. What would you tell your younger self? I tell my younger self, don't worry so much about the architecture, get into the business side of it.
And last and final question: what's still on your bucket list to achieve?
My bucket list to achieve is to hopefully. There's a company called, I don't know if you heard of Morgan & Morgan.
Yes.
So I happen to know the COO of it. I would love to figure out how you can accomplish by the time he's 35 to be the CEO of Morgan & Morgan.
Massive company.
Right. So I actually used to drive into school every morning.
Wow.
He's younger than me. I think he's 35 years old. He made his first 100 million by the time he was 22.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So,
yeah. I think I recently spoke to one of their team members that have like 6,000 employees around the world.
9,000.
9,000. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I would love to have an office in every state where we're designing. And the truth is, it's going to sound very superficial. It sound like I'm on some type of stage and saying things on behalf of like getting the American flag or something, right? But the truth is, I really want to do things that will change the world. I realized a long time ago that just doing work doesn't give me the strive, but doing something that makes a difference in the world. And I don't mean just oh, a nice project or a big building. So someone can say, I mean, really, like this project in Okeechobee, which we're doing, is I wake up every morning living it, because to me, I'm making such a difference. And I think that we sometimes think about business and we say, oh, we're just going to make money. If we can figure out a way to make a difference, and at the same time we make money, we make a living on it, that is to me is my drive that keeps me going every day.
Amazing. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. I know your time is valuable. That is why, in the name of our listeners, we'll forever be grateful for sharing some of your time with us today. It's been a blast.
Thank you, May. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you allowing me to speak.
Absolutely.